Well, welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. We're going to talk this week about the brazen testimony by Leon Panetta before the Senate of the United States. In a hearing that was held before the Senate Armed Forces Committee, both the Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Martin Dempsey, said that we don't have to come to the Congress any longer to get permission to go to war, that this is all being done under the United Nations. And Senator Sessions, to his credit, tried to get these gentlemen to retract their statements to make sure that it was clarified what they meant. And this is what Panetta said. "You know, our goal would be to seek international permission as opposed to congressional. And we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress." So now the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the President of the United States, who has also iterated that the Libyan action was a result of the United Nations Security Council, and he doesn't even need to get into the constitutional arguments relative to sending American troops to war. These sorts of things are happening now, and Congress has got to step up and say, thus far and no further. This is the kind of thing that you get as a result when you think in terms of, oh, I don't want to be an isolationist. You're not being an isolationist, you're being a constitutionalist. You're saying you cannot commit troops from the United States of America until you have a declaration of war by the Congress. And the implication is that there's got to be some sort of an aggressive act by a belligerent party before we declare that war. Otherwise, we're just going to be sending our men all over the world as a result of United Nations edicts. Oh, I'm sorry, we already are sending our troops all over the world as a result of the edicts of the Security Council. We still have people in Korea. We still have people in NATO, in Europe, which is a subsidiary of the United Nations. We have people in Kosovo. We have people in Macedonia. We have people, all under the edicts of the United Nations. And this is isolationism if you oppose that. The other thing is that we're giving so much power to these people in the United Nations through this procedure that it slops over into other issues. For instance, I just saw a news magazine put out by one of the major online news sources that on one hand says we got to go to war against Iran. Had nice little maps and everything else. We've got to have war against them. We're going to take them out. We're going to have democracy. If you don't listen to us and do it our way, that's not democracy. We're going to bomb you. And everybody says, yeah, that's right, because, you know, if we don't get Iran, it's going to be a problem. If we don't get Iraq, it's going to be a problem. If we don't get Afghanistan, it's going to be a problem. If we don't get Kosovo, it's going to be a problem. And yet in the same newspaper, in the same magazine that's talking about bombing Iran, it says the UN is trying to take control over Americans' domestic right to keep and bear arms, that they want to confiscate American firearms out of the hands of the private citizen. And they don't see the correlation between that and this other business that they're promoting through the United Nations, a perpetual war. This gives them the power to come back and get our weapons here in the United States. And we say, well, we're going to war to stop terrorism and that sort of thing. And then that argument runs out because we don't find any terrorists until we get there, and then we produce terrorists by some of the things that our guys do overseas. This recent killings in Afghanistan. You can well imagine the waiting lines to sign up for the terrorist organizations now as a result of acts of going out and slaughtering women and children by one of our armed forces. Karzai doesn't like it, the leader of Afghanistan, has ordered us out. But we're not leaving, of course, because he doesn't have anything to say about it anymore. We're there to establish democracy, which means you take orders from us. Now, you know, I may not like what my neighbor does. Does that give me the right to go over and tell him what to do? No. And I don't like what goes on in Afghanistan. I don't like what goes on in most countries around the world. But that does not give me the right to go over and bomb them and give them democracy by telling them, you accept my brand of democracy, which is you do what I tell you or we bomb you. It's not right. And this is the problem too, is we don't seem to understand that this is also domestic policy. Democracy in the United States means the government tells us what to do. Have you ever thought that one through? As long as you're doing what the government wants you to do, that's democracy. It's not, where people that live in a neighborhood just simply want to be left alone to go about their own business. As long as I don't violate the rights of my neighbor, I can pretty much do what I want to do. Now, there's some moral issues involved there, of course, as far as my personal conduct, even behind closed doors. I understand that. But, this idea that democracy means that we get to go and bomb the world is ludicrous. That's not democracy, and the people being bombed understand that. They have no choice in it. They may have no choice over their own government either. But we cannot be the gatekeepers. We cannot be the keepers of the world on what's right and what's wrong. It doesn't work, because it comes back ultimately to the American people. When we create that kind of a system, sometime in the future, they're going to come back and just tell us what to do, just like they're telling us what to do with this testimony by Panetta, whether or not we want to get permission from the Congress. If the armed forces of the United States under the current leadership, both Republican and Democrat, can do as they darn well please without the Congress, what does that tell you? To be opposed to that is isolationism. To me, it's just freedom. The people either control our own armed forces or we do not. If we do not, then we have a serious problem. Think that one through. It's not isolationism. It comes right back home to whether we have freedom or whether we don't. Whether the people are in charge through their representatives in Congress or we are not. Until next week, we'll see you then.